gonna start with a little breathing exercise. Take my nerves away. Now I'm lightheaded. Bad idea. There you go, an inflatable sculpture right there. 2D into 3D. We're all attracted to the balloon, right? Like it's joyous, happy. But what happens when I start going like this? You getting nervous? I'm getting nervous. Right? And we've all been victim, like, to the popping in our faces or bursting, like this explosion, or when it's a helium balloon you loved as a child and it slips away and you watch it for miles and miles. Sadly, it just increases the pain as it slowly floats away. I don't know if I should bounce this around. You can play with it. No, leave it there. Someone might get aggressive with it. Tends to have that effect. It's a long history of people slashing inflatable art and architecture. Artists and architects, engineers, and utopian thinkers have been using the bubble, balloon, and the inflated form to investigate physical, emotional, and metaphorical boundaries for hundreds of years. Francis Goya painted this picture of these young boys inflating a pig's bladder. The sphere, the bubble, or balloon is inherently familiar because of the relationship to our own body. And we take a deep breath, our bodies actually inflate, exhale, deflates. When confronted with an inflatable form, we are subconsciously attracted to the anthropomorphic qualities of it, but are very leery of it, as its thin and vulnerable membrane reminds us of our own mortality. Tom Friedman says the spit bubble is the only way a human body can create a perfect shape. Rula, maybe you can argue against that. She can make some pretty perfect shapes with her hands. Now, German architect and structural engineer Frey Otto studied the structure of the soap bubble, and specifically the points where the soap bubbles join. From there, he could design new curves and forms within architecture. He believed deeply that we should understand everything about the natural world if we want to create a sustainable world for future generations. That's one of his works. Tensile and pneumatic architecture coincides with the countercultural vibes of the 60s and 70s because of its light environmental footprint and its unconventional forms. But in reality, it emerged in tandem with the geopolitical forces that shaped that era, such as the Cold War and the space race. This public sculpture, but it's also architecture, is both a shelter and a beacon. The soft form contrasts the hard edges of the historical buildings that it accompanies. Let's take a moment to visualize the thought bubble. It's an extension of ourselves, but separated. The edges are not clearly defined. A thought, a bubble, inflated sculpture, and architecture are malleable, expendable, and ephemeral. The earliest inflatable forms were made with rubber, pig's bladders, and paper. Today, inflatables are usually made from synthetic materials, such as polyethylene, vinyl, nylons, and Tyvek. These fabrics define air pressure. The synthetic material versus the natural material of air challenges our perception of what's familiar to what's not familiar. The anthropomorphic qualities of the inflatable form offer an innate connection to our body, although the scale of the form usually challenges our perception of space, as it's often much larger than ourselves. Today I will be sharing my interests and attraction to the inflatable form by looking at its paradoxical characteristics and materiality. Some of these characteristics, paradoxical ones, are the attraction, repulsion, security, vulnerability, humor, cynicism, the intelligence of it, the stupidity of them, playfulness, disaster. They have a calming effect, but also attract aggressive behavior, natural and synthetic, industrial and organic. The personality and materiality of inflatable forms have inspired the imagination of alternative worlds through sculpture and installations, architecture, and social protests. Without inflatable technology, we may have never made it to the moon. Without the space race, we may have not developed such devices such as the airbag. Inflatables have saved lives through airbags, lifeboats, temporary shelters. Inflatable forms have combated loneliness, united communities. They have offered affordable and low-emission building solutions. Inflatable forms hold the answer to zero-emission flight travel. I can see some skeptical thoughts floating above you. I understand that most of you are likely imagining inflatable forms more such as these ones. Those are the clown. This one. I've imagined the structure of my talk to be like a cluster of balloons. When individual balloons group together, their edges blend together, just as ideas of art blend into architecture, architecture back into art, sharing ideas of space, ideas, materials, and formats. Each balloon is like each trait of inflatables, the ideas and traits having their own form, but part of a continuous form, overlapping, gently colliding, informing and interrupting one another. The subject of inflatables is very expansive, much like the 20-foot inflatable Santa that you may soon be seeing in your neighborhood. I will touch on ideas of utopism, social engagement, understanding perceptions of space through historical and contemporary uses of inflatable forms. In the late 1960s and early 70s, there were many architectural collectives such as Archigram, Super Studio, Archizoom, Utop, and Ant Farm, exploring the inflatable form as a critique against the brutalist and modern architecture that preceded them. Designs for utopian cities were imagined. Ant Farm was an American architectural collective group who designed and created situations and happenings through inflatables. I'm not sure a collage party would work very well in there with the scissors and the knives, but I guess maybe we could try that sometime. Their expansive inflated spaces were described as a place for the imagination to flourish, as there's no distinguishing between what's the floor and the walls and the ceiling. One is always negotiating the space around them. New boundaries are being understood. The space could be whatever you want it to be. That's one of their air pillows. And sheet plastics and vinyls were a newer material and beginning to be readily accessible then. The use of plastics used within this time was understood as exploring new frontiers and new possibilities, a material of the future. Controlling and shaping air was possible with the light and durability of plastics. At the time, plastics were seen as low impact on the earth. Within this image, you can clearly see how the soft curved forms of the body relate to the inflatable structure. Soft organic forms are malleable, easily influenced, distorted, expanded, deflated. This is a drawing of their proposal for the snake truck. The physical attributes of inflatables opened up the investigation of temporary structures and ideas around mobility and knowledge sharing. Ant Farm published the Inflatable Cookbook. It's available online in a PDF format still. This was I'd like to think of it as early open source knowledge, echoing the philosophy and inclusiveness of inflatables. You can see this is a contemporary version by architectural firm Rummelau in Germany. They made the Space Busters van. You can see the little drawing up there, how similar it is. This inflated dome emerges from the truck and moves from place to place. The dome expands organically to fill its surroundings. The inflated pavilion provides a temporary location for community events, such as screenings, lectures, and workshops. It can fit up to 80 people. Although the walls are thin and the boundaries between the inside and outside of the form are not fully separated, the roundness and openness of the form bring people together into a private space, but still open to those on the other side. The circular form is conducive to inclusiveness, an excellent space for sharing new ideas and concepts. Inhabitants feel safe within the space. Maybe not as safe as the people in the 1960s and Ant Farm's pillows, as I didn't come across any images of people with their clothes off in these current ones. There was criticism at the time, and in hindsight, that this quick and easy DIY inflatables that Ant Farm promoted hindered the advancement of inflatables. Ant Farm's pillows were often destroyed by the wind or became unbearably hot. The general public began to see that inflatable structures were unreliable and not trustworthy, thus minimizing the more serious and viable architecture that was happening in its day. Victor Lundy is one such architect that successfully designed inflatable temporary structures. He considered the aerodynamics so the wind would not catch the inflated form and created reasonable, sensible support systems to weigh it down. He also designed the walls to be double layers so the air would flow between, which could help control the temperature. This is the AEC Pavilion, which is the Atomic Energy Commission Pavilion. It was an exhibition that was part of the Atoms for Peace program. The pavilion traveled around Latin America, and it was part of a program that America set up to take the fear out of nuclear research, but in fact it gave them more opportunity to research it for their weapons, and they ended up sharing their knowledge of weapon research instead of positive research that would help us. So the whole, inflatable, the attractive and seductive qualities that make inflatables are an excellent tool for propaganda and protest. The large scale attracts much attention, and they can be easily moved around. It took about 30 minutes for this thing to inflate. This is a 20-meter monster that was carried across the Red Square in 1934. The caterpillar form represents an animal in the stage of transformation, or in this situation, it was a society in transformation. Although it is a creature, human traits are painted on its face in a cartoonish style, revealing a darker, more sinister undercurrent. The seams on the head all lead towards the central bright spot on the forehead. The figure symbolizes the threat of National Socialism growing in strength at the time in Germany. The Macy's parade has been going since 1927. They've been using inflatables to seduce crowds and stimulate consumption. In 1928, during the parade's finale, the organizers thought it would be a dramatic finish to release the balloons. Unexpectedly, they all exploded. Pretty tragic. And still today, I recommend watching. You can find YouTube videos of current Macy's parades where either these things get caught on a light post or there's a big gust of wind and everybody's holding the ropes and they get torn apart, and there's this slow, violent death of Barney or Rudolph. It's both like captivating but off-putting because of its. You may be familiar with this piece. I asked the question, is it art, propaganda, or activism piece, or is it more like what you see in the Macy's Day Parade? Florentine Hoffman is a Dutch artist that makes playful objects and installations for the public. He was the first person to install this within various city harbors. But for Canada's 150, Toronto Harbourfront installed the rubber ducky, but it was not through Florentine Hoffman. It was through another design firm, which I guess did it for less money, possibly. And since it's the rubber ducky, there's no copyright on that image, so there's nothing Florentine Hoffman could do about it. It attracted crowds and looked very good on Instagram, but I don't think it challenged any social, environmental concerns, or anything political, or even a personal reflection. In this case, it was a tool for attraction and consumption. I'm going to show a video, let's just play, of an installation of my own, which was in CAFKA, part of CAFKA. It's Contemporary Art Forum in Kitchener and Waterloo area. As it's a little bit anti-capitalist and consumption-based with these labelless bags, it was installed within a shopping mall. There's 160 of these bags that inflated and deflated at different times. There's also a nice contrast to all the busyness within the mall, all the people shopping and dressed and food. That's it. Sometimes we need a little escape from the ways of the world, step outside of our workplace, reset ourselves and check our guidelines. Haas Rococo from Vienna used a little more sophistication within their inflatable structures than their contemporaries. This was in 1972 at the Documenta. It's a single-person oasis that emerges from windows of office buildings. The work explored intersections of power and design, prying at the possibilities of the everyday and pointing towards a future liberated from ideologies of control. This work also disrupts the order between the public and private spaces. Hong Tao Zhao invited the viewer to enter within the form, and because of the scale of inflatables and the safety factor, like it's not going to hurt anybody if it does break down. Inflatable art and installations have that advantage where the viewer can often go within them. Because the bubble does not provide the grid of perpendicular horizontals and verticals, which we usually orient ourselves. We're confronted instead with a fluid environment of curving surfaces and seemingly endless infinite space. When we're inside a sphere, we move around with no defined sense of direction. Inflatable artworks challenge some of our conventional ideas about space and how we perceive them. This was his installation went outside the building and back and throughout. Inside the bubble or pneumatic structure, we're constantly gauging our relationship between the outside and inside and dealing with the real and imagined borders. Visualizing this in-between space helps us understand the in-between spaces of the virtual and real spaces that we are learning to navigate. This is artist Olga Diego. Similar material as the last artist, but it's about like, this looks a little bit more like skin, or there's more opaqueness to it. It gives a different sense. Some older work where I investigated these ideas of the inside and outside boundaries and being within the space. This was from the outside of the gallery, and then I recreated walls that were inflated, and I had a pulley system that released the tension of the walls. People would walk through, and that idea of what's moving and what's not moving, or an imagined space, like you're walking in a cloud, no defined boundaries. Another work was installed in Peterborough, where coming from outside the gallery, you look in the windows, and the sculpture is attached to the windows. When you come in the gallery, you can no longer see inside the work, which you could when you were outside. And then there's also this tension of where the building starts and stops, and is the sculpture using the building's air system, or is it using its own? There's a lot of mystery within inflatables, gives a lot of space for imagination and defining our place within it. This is the interior of Museo Aerosolar. It's a large solar aerosolar balloon project that Thomas Saracino has started. It's a system, it's a collaborative project. Like several groups and communities have made this project throughout the world. All you need is used shopping bags, tape, knives, and a large group of people. He started this project because he's really interested in figuring out and researching zero emission flight travel and making awareness to people about pollution and climate change and our consumption within it. So there it is, floating. This maybe could be done during Sappy Fest or something, right? That would look great. This is a more developed balloon where it's interdisciplinary artistic community aero scene, which is also headed by Thomas Saracino, where they have launched this balloon traveled with 7 people within it for about 3 hours. It uses zero emissions. It's the fabric and is heated. It's black, so it gets heated by the sun, and that is what is powering the balloon. So this was first launched in the New Mexico White Sands Desert area, where early rocket launches were launched from the American military. And also there's a tourist spaceport is also there. So this work, launching it there is quite significant to say, like, this could actually happen. You know, years ago, people weren't sure that rockets could exist, but they do exist. You know, this sort of research into zero emissions flight travel can actually work. And also challenging and putting forefront, like, do we really need tourism to space? Like, that's a lot of unnecessary fossil fuels. Oh, sorry, this little writing on there. Okay. The inflated form has always signified ways of the future. Looking back at the 1960s and 70s, we may feel like that we're in the future of that time, nearing 2020. The inflatable forms are still challenging new perceptions and methods, but come with a lot of skeptical baggage. The early hot air balloons were destroyed. People didn't know what they were terrified of them. There's some people just attacking with pitchforks. Oh, I guess I missed it. There was another, I lost that image, but public sculptures that have been lost or have been slashed because the general public didn't like them. So the hot air balloon was the first time people were lifted above the earth and had a different perspective of the earth. So it inspired dreams of new possibilities and new territories. This artist, Fiona Tan, wanted an opportunity to reconsider how she sees the world and her relationship to it through this art project of fastening herself to helium balloons. She had a rope that she held onto. She recorded the experience with video so she could share that with other people. Ideas around connectedness, surveillance, and going beyond the usual vantage point were things that she considered. This is Larry Walters, also known as Lawn Chair Larry. Maybe, yeah, just gonna have a little drink. Larry was driven by his urge to fly. So he built his own flying apparatus. His eyesight was too weak to become a pilot. And he wasn't doing this for fame or scientific research or anything. This was 1982, so there wasn't YouTube video fame or Instagram fame. This was like of his own urge to be up in the air. So what Larry did was tie 45 helium-filled balloons to a lawn chair. And then he has some supplies. He used a pellet gun to shoot balloons down to control his height. Yeah. You can see I think like his idea looks much like a thought bubble, right? Top of his head. But perhaps some of his thoughts were not that fully thought through. He dropped his BB gun somewhere along the way. His flight ended as he became tangled in electrical wires. He thankfully and surprisingly did not become electrocuted, but did shut down the power for a whole neighborhood and had to be obviously rescued. So, poor Larry. And for some reason, there have been many copycats to Long-Term Larry. Although Larry's story wasn't super successful, but you can appreciate how accessible inflatable materials are, and that anything is really possible. Like, if you want to fly, you can fly. This accessibility makes inflatables an excellent resource for creating visual forms during social protests. The large scale attracts much attention, and they can be easily moved around. The paradoxical characteristics of being vulnerable and strong, playful and violent, disappointing but hopeful, complement the complex issues of social protests. Tools for Action is a group started by and led by Arthur Van Balen. He enables groups to create inflatable sculptures that are used in protests. This is the Mirror Brigade. It's considered a social sculpture. It was first made in Dortmund, Germany, to protest against xenophobia and neo-Nazism. The neo-Nazi party was planning to march within the city, and the 14 schools participated in making of this mirrored cube. During the protests, the cubes act as cushions between protesters and marchers and police forces. The playfulness and gentleness of the form assist in keeping a very serious moment lighter. It's very hard to say bubble in an angry tone. If you want to try it, go ahead. The soft form of the cubes can also cannot be used as weapons when protesters sometimes turn to violence and destruction. The flexibility gives a lot of openness and responsiveness to the protest. The reflective material, in this case, forces the viewer to face themselves and ask them and see themselves, what position am I in? What am I doing here? When the police force, this is also, sometimes there's images of them cutting and slashing the balloon. They look quite ridiculous, that they're, and showing unnecessary violence when they're like trying to combat this balloon, right? They look quite ridiculous. So it sort of diminishes their power in a way. These cubes have been altered with different colors and different words for different protests. This fall, my life partner and art partner, Robert Hengeveld, and I did one of our maybe my first activism piece. There was a festival in Corner Brook called the CB Nuit One Night Festival. So what we did was capture car exhaust in plastic tubing. It was 24 inches. So you see here, I'm about to attach this tube to a muffler, and we timed it for 3 minutes. Here we are sealing the vehicle's exhaust. And then they were hung within the city hall. So it was important for us to install it within the city hall. It's a place where policies and decisions are made about pollution and environmental concerns. And also to have this work inside. Like, it actually took quite a bit of convincing for the city hall to accept that we could have this in their space. Because, like I've been saying, like it's very vulnerable. It's easy, like, just take a pen and like poke a hole in there, and then this exhaust, this poison will come out. But when we're outside on the sidewalk or the street, we don't think about car emissions, right? And the various lengths are from various vehicles. The shortest one is 2017 Honda Civic, and the one that's going to the floor is a 1980 RV, and then there was a 1970s Chevy truck that went like down the floor and another like 15 feet, and it had like yellow liquid and was black. So there's thankfully there has been technology that's making our vehicles cleaner, but yeah. And we labeled the make of the car and the year of the car on the piece. This is also facilitated by Tools for Action Group. It was protesting the U.S. military is actually a really huge environmental disaster contributor. U.S. military, it's estimated they use about 5% of the global greenhouse gas. They contribute to that, but they don't really have to acknowledge it or say how much they use. This was representing a bomb that had exploded near a military academy, and it floated up the Hudson River to New York. It was an anti-pollution piece, but it also turned into anti-war, the Veterans for Peace. Followed along and took this piece to other events, anti-war protests. Inflatable technology had its early investigations within the military. Tanks were used as decoys. Inflatable tanks and plane replicas are still used today within military as decoys and training devices. To recap some material characteristics of inflatables, they're empty, they float on hot air, deceptive, attention-seeking, all right, and they spread propaganda, like my own propaganda right now. This is Trump Baby. You've maybe seen this in the media. It's designed by Leo Murray and funded through crowdsourcing. Trump Baby floated in several UK cities when Trump was visiting the UK recently. There's also a Trump Baby in the United States that is adopted through different states when needed periodically. So artists and architects have always been responding to what's happening in culture and the environment around them. We're currently in a cultural moment when the stakes are high for a livable climate. If we maybe don't listen to the protests and warnings, our future may look like this one, well, at least maybe for the privileged. The rest of us may depend on the survival shelters that Anna Rowakovic's sleeping bag piece has been making, or Michael Rakowitz has designed several temporary shelters for homeless communities where they take the air from existing buildings to give them heat and warmth, and these portable units keep them dry. They have little pockets and spaces for their belongings, and they can easily be packed up and transported, giving them a lot of freedom. Okay. So you may be feeling like the balloon slowly deflating with all this end of the world talk, but let's remember the optimism of inflatables, right? Has zero emissions transportation technology, communities working together, got beer pong in the pool, gives you closer access to nature, beautifies your yard. Instigates the imagination and offers solution for sustainable and affordable architecture. These are the Binney Shell buildings. They're designed by Dante Binney. They're supported with an inflatable dome structure. You can see the process here, and then concrete and rebar is added on top of the inflated form. I was imagining this yesterday during Anya's talk, like, oh, maybe Adobe mud and things could be added, make sculptural form, like, because it collapses. Anyways, it can be built fairly quickly, sustainable, maybe looks better with the natural environment in the end, can be done, yeah, quickly, yeah. So there's one made several years, like probably made in 1960s, hasn't been kept up, but it's still standing, right? There's new technology being used for inflatables. It's called the ETFE, is the ethylene tetrafluoroethylene. It's a super strong anti-corrosive plastic. It's 100 times lighter than glass, and those panels are filled with air, which can inflate and deflate, which help regulate buildings' temperature. If it's too sunny, like fog can be added to make it more opaque, to block out the sun. It's pretty cool. There's another building, water cube. Another cool, oh, wait a second, sorry. I guess there's a little bit of transfer, but there's another, I don't have the image, it's got on another additive, but there's another technology, IDU process, where it's free inner pressure deformation. It turns thin metal sheets into hollow volumes, and so it's super light when you pick it up, but it's super strong. It can hold about 2 tons of weight. So, thanks to inflatables, there's much optimism and hope for a cleaner and more breathable future if we capture and realize our dreams and work collaboratively and expand our spatial perceptions. I think we can have a better future. I hope I've expanded your knowledge of the inflatable form as ignited your imagination to envision an optimistic future. Thank you. And then when we took the work down, she mentioned Jim, we hooked up to a shop vac with a filter. So we tried to filter that car exhaust before putting it back out in the world. So it didn't seem right to like some people we ask, they're like, no, I don't want to idle my car unnecessarily, right? It's like adding to pollution. It's usually like in my own work or in works in general. Yeah, usually my work is somehow, it has a starting point. Like it does relate to some form or site, like the architecture that it's in. Maybe the most formal piece I did was in the OCADU gallery in the Yukon, where they had those ceiling tiles, office ceiling tiles, and I just took that shape and made prisms varying lengths. And I filled it with daylight bulbs because it was shown during November, December, and it was really dark. But yeah, that's probably as formal or basic. Yeah, but other pieces I've done, I've copied, made patterns from the tall skyscrapers or lunar lander, and I think maybe in the sense where like just making a large bubble, like it's kind of the formal qualities of the sphere, right, that they're exploring. The first part of the question, the
shopping bags and the inflation.
The solar, that is, I think they do put a little bit of air in it, like just fill it to start, and then once the air is in there, it's heated up with the sun, and then it rises. So it doesn't have a continual air flow or air system attached to it. And then, yes, I worked with lots of different mediums before working with inflatables. I worked with concrete and wood, and I've done a lot of woodworking as jobs. So what I appreciate about inflatables and in my own practice is that responsiveness that it gives to a space, and that it can really change how you relate to a space and how you move in it. And I like that relationship, how it relates to the body, like the softness and the breathing of the form. And also, I think I was saying to Larry how it's, even though you have a specific plan, there's this little surprise, like when you inflate something, like I followed very geometric plans, and then it becomes rounded, and there's quite a long process before you can gather the material to inflate it to see how it looks. So I like that element of surprise, and that the sculpture is going to do its own thing in the end, and then when it's you still have some more freedom during installation and setup, like depending on the space and how it's going to fit within it. Yes, I was born.
I'm ultimately, I'd like to hear about some inflation bloopers.
Yes. I did
That's where I'm going.
Piece for Toronto's Nuit Blanche. It was piles of black garbage bags that were all interconnected and then inflated. And then there was a mechanism that turned the fan on and off. So these piles were heaving. And so I think there was maybe 4 or 5, like quite large. It was like the length of the alleyway was maybe like this long. It was whatever. But anyway, so Nuit Blanche is pretty stressful exhibition to be a part of. This is like thousands and thousands of people. It was whatever, 6:30, the work was set up. It starts at like 6:45 or 6:50, whenever dusk is. And then there was this wind gust that came, and there's like wind tunnels because it's downtown and all these. And it picked up the work. We're like grabbing the work, and then it's tearing because the weight of the fan, right? It's like, and I had a 6-week-old baby on the side. It was just awful. And then we were madly taping it, but then because we didn't have such a good seal anymore, it wasn't as effective, right? So it didn't work as well, and yeah, people maybe if they're just zipping through, they don't really get the concept, and then people would take their cigarettes and like put more holes in it, and just because it's black garbage bag, so they already have this association of not respecting it, and so it was awful. But
and what was the?
That's an awful show to be a part of. But
and what was the? Where was the site exactly?
It's the Scotiabank, like right below Queen and between Queen and Adelaide and Bay. Like there's like a tiny alleyway between the. Yeah. So I don't often like doing inflatable artwork outside because there's too many. Yes. That's a good point. Yeah, and like some of the other artists have attached to building sources like air, that's always, and even working with this medium of plastic and synthetic materials as an artist, it's like to go out and buy that stuff now, like seems like Tyvek, you can technically send it back and they'll recycle it, but so far I just have boxes of, I haven't recycled any of my sculptures, I've reused them or repurposed them, but I don't think that's why, like those mirrored cubes are inflated and they're sealed, like, so that it's not a continual, there's lots of pieces where, but that's also hard to do like long term because air, it easily leaks from everything. There's battery operated fans, but then, which I'm looking into, like I'm starting a project where having inflatable suits and mobile suits, so I don't think there's enough sun in Corner Brook and heat to practice the solar powered heat, so maybe I can apply for a residency somewhere warm during the winter research, but yeah, I'll have to think about that some more. I guess yeah, that's kind of trait, like because there's a certain point as an artist, like you know what's going to work and what not, so you don't even follow it, but there's definitely always room for intuitive and working, like one thing I noticed with inflatable forms, they need some kind of grounding or connection, like either be attached to a building, or I've used props like styrofoam or something to prop them up and to assist them in their place and their being, right? So I don't always know that until I'm in a space, or I'll look at gallery's site plan and then decide, like, okay, it can come out of this closet door, or it comes from the ceiling, or something like that. But I'd say, yeah, it's fairly planned out because you're putting a lot of time into crafting it, and then, but there is, like, you can easily bunch it up or shorten something if need be. I do like the act of, or thinking of sculpture performing. Like the residency that I did here, the work that Robert and I did was this sculptural cube where we set up, and it was on the stage, and we set up chairs, and then it had lights and music, and it was doing its thing. And that video piece that I showed you, like that piece is always changing and moving, and within a shopping mall, you don't, like, people aren't expecting to come across artwork, right? I have done a lot of work for festivals and in public spaces, and I do appreciate that aspect of the inflatable form. People have a connection to it, and it's doing something. It's sustaining their viewership a little bit longer, like maybe till 20 seconds than the 10 seconds. But I do, yeah. It's part of my interest for sure. Yeah, even like a simple balloon, like people smack it, and like Bozo the Clown was invented, like just to smack. I don't know if it's this idea that we have the power to destroy something so big, like it's this innate dark side in us that we can overcome this object or take the breath out of it. Like it's this, I don't really want to spend a lot of time thinking about that side of human nature, so I'd rather think about the balloon. But yeah, it is this strange contrast of something. Yeah, and it was a Trump supporter that slashed the Trump baby, of course, and or people have found their Christmas ornament, like their lawn ornaments, have been slashed, and yeah.
Please join me in thanking Marcia for her great presentation.